our panelists today. It's so good to talk about great things that are going on at this university. Grad studies is certainly obviously near and dear to my heart as the Associate Dean of Grad Studies for the Faculty of Arts. My name is Jared Wesley. I'd be remiss if I didn't tell the story of how I got to know about this book. I spend way too much time on Twitter. But it was, I believe it was the beginning of June last year. And I was preparing to come into my Associate Dean Graduate Studies role. And I was really apprehensive. What does this job entail? How do I even go about thinking about grad programs in arts? I'd always been passionate about connecting the work we do here at the university with community. And then Jonathan sent out a tweet, something to the effect of, love this new book that's going to be coming out about exactly that topic. So I was very happy that they sent me an early copy of it. I devoured it. You're probably very lucky I wasn't the peer reviewer on it because I loved every bit of it and I wouldn't have been any help at all whatsoever. But it is a fabulous book. If you hadn't had a chance to pick it up, there are copies at the back. And I'm very proud that the University of Alberta Press is the one that that is publishing it. I think this is an important piece that deserves a wide audience. I can't think of a better press to do that. So welcome here. I just want to acknowledge that we are gathered here on Treaty 6 territory. And here at the University of Alberta, we respect the histories, languages, cultures of First Nations, Métis, Inuit, and all First Peoples of Canada, whose presence continues to enrich our vibrant community. I can tell you some of the most enriching parts of my job are hearing about all of the fabulous work that is going on in incorporating EDID, equity, diversity, inclusion, and decolonization. And I think it's important work that our grad students conduct alongside Indigenous peoples in this community and elsewhere. So without further ado, I'm happy to welcome the three authors of For the Public Good to talk a bit about what the book is about. That's what we're going to spend our first 20 minutes or so doing. And then I'm going to invite some of our other guests to please join us on stage to give a moderated discussion. I'll leave their identities as a mystery for now. I'll introduce them in a moment, but I do want to introduce my esteemed colleagues, friends, political scientists, all. But I do appreciate how their work speaks to the broader social sciences and humanities landscape. So Loleen Berdahl will be starting our discussion today. Loleen is Executive Director of the Johnson Shoyama Graduate School of Public Policy at the University of Saskatchewan. Her work explores Canadian federalism and public policy. Her research has made a big impact on me as a political scientist, understanding public perceptions in Saskatchewan, but the broader West as well, including sectors like nuclear energy. Just recently, earlier this month, she was named the recipient of a 3M National Teaching Fellowship, which for those of you who don't know is a very big deal, but very well deserved. I can't think of a better recipient, certainly in my network, of that award. Jonathan Malloy is the Bell Chair for Canadian Parliamentary Democracy at Carleton University. We forgive him for being from Ottawa.
When I checked in my hotel last night,
yeah.
The clerk asked, where are you from? I said,
Indeed. Jonathan's academic journey started with an Ontario legislative internship in 1992-93, and I know there's a number of people actually that have had those kind of practical experience that are in the room, including a few sitting over here. Jonathan's extensive experience with teaching and research alongside with leadership roles, including in academia and professional association, positions him very well to talk about the future of arts graduate education. And Dr. Lisa Young is a professor and former dean of graduate studies, recovering dean, I think is what you said, right? Recovering dean of graduate studies from the University of Calgary. Again, we will not hold that against her. She specializes in Canadian political science, focusing on political parties and electoral systems. She has one of the most read blogs in Alberta politics, aptly called What Now? I encourage you to sign up for that on Substack. Lisa's work not only enhances academic understanding, but also guides policy reform, making her insights into the future of social sciences education particularly relevant. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Loleen, who will deliver the first part of her presentation. Loleen.
Thank you, Jared, and thank you everyone for being here. It's thrilling to be at this point. I don't know how many people have written books, but they always take a little longer than you expect, and then sometimes if a pandemic gets thrown into your writing process, they can take a little longer still. But we are absolutely delighted to be here, and it's been a great pleasure working with the University of Alberta Press. So thank you for all the work that you've done. We've had a few people today ask us, well, what inspired you to write the book? I won't give you the long story, but the short story is that all three of us have been very heavily involved in graduate education in the social sciences and humanities, and we see so much potential that we want to see realized in this sphere and in this country and in the world. And we were doing what we could in our little corners, and then we were like, you know what? Let's try to get other people to do the same. So that's what we're hoping to do today, is to share some ideas with you to help you see or actualize the potential in arts graduate education. So our position is that the world needs social sciences and humanities, and that Canada needs the social sciences and humanities. So some of you may be aware that we live in challenging times. This has been true for a while. Every year since. So pre-COVID we felt that way, and then during COVID we felt that way, and now after COVID, and it's just the complexity is so significant, and the social sciences and humanities have a tremendous amount of information, of knowledge, of insight that can be brought to this sphere, to Canada. And in particular, the position we take in the book is that there's a number of public good imperatives that Canada needs assistance with. The first of these is that we need more innovative solutions to Canada's wicked problems. And I'll go into what wicked problems are, but Canada needs help in addressing and working with a number of really significant challenges that it has. The second is that Canada needs action on equity, diversity, inclusion, and decolonization. And this is something that is a public good imperative that we need attention paid to. And then third public good imperative that we note in the book is that we need skilled knowledge workers. We need skilled knowledge workers with specific talents that can make those first two happen. That it's not just goodwill and wishes, but it's actual talents, skills, competencies that need to be applied. And it's our position that arts graduate education, and by this we mean the social sciences and humanities, that arts graduate education can help address these three public good imperatives for Canada. So I'm going to quickly talk you through them, and then I'll turn things over to Lisa. So the wicked problem imperative, what do we mean by that? Well, wicked problems, some of you may be familiar with this literature. Wicked problems are these ill-defined problems. They're interwoven. They might not have solutions. If they have solutions, they're not easy. They're not tidy. The way I like to think of wicked problems is whack-a-mole. You think you've got a solution, you apply it, and other things pop up. And then you try something else. Boom, boom, boom. They keep coming. And they're really intertwined and interwoven. Some examples here would be homelessness and affordable housing, the opioid crisis, climate change, vaccine hesitation, responses to masking. I can go on, but we've got a lot of issues that are complex, and they're issues that the arts has a lot to contribute. So they require expertise in science in many cases. We can't necessarily negotiate disease away, but they also require insight from the arts. And so we were having a conversation earlier that I was speaking with the leader of a major vaccine organization in Canada, and this was sort of a little bit more than a year into COVID, and it was after the vaccines had rolled out, and he said to me, I thought that we would introduce the vaccines and everyone would be happy and they just take them. And I said, well, we should have talked. Like there's sort of insights into how people work that could add value to what's being done in the sciences. And there's also things that are just not scientific problems to solve, but they're societal issues that the arts has a lot to add to. And we believe arts graduate programs can help in a number of ways. So it can bring students in contact with wicked problems, help them think about these things, prepare them to be members of multidisciplinary teams, because wicked problems require multidisciplinary approaches, and enable them to have the knowledge and skills to help Canada move forward on this front. The equity, diversity, and inclusion imperative. I know this is something that the University of Alberta takes very seriously, and I'm excited about the work that's going on here. But really, we have an imperative in Canada to address systemic issues that have long been ignored, conflicts and resentments that come out of these things, and to be moving forward in a positive way. And this, again, is something where arts graduate education has a real role to play in terms of preparing students to engage in these conversations, equipping them to have a deep understanding of the issues as opposed to just a sort of a surface level response, and preparing them to be leaders in this front. And on this particular imperative, one question we ask in the book is, if the arts aren't going to lead on this issue, who is? Because this is an area of particular expertise. And then finally, the talent imperative. And so quite often there's concern when we start talking about universities, and we start to think, whenever we talk about skills and competencies, and I always encounter that guy, and it's always, well, we're not a polytech. It's like, of course we're not a polytech. But that doesn't mean that we're not training students to do things in the world, and there's value in doing so in a deliberate way. So we talk about the need for human talent and human skills, human literacy, data literacy, and technological literacy. And what we argue in the book is that arts graduate education programs can do a lot to help students become leaders of complex teams, to train students to analyze data, but also to be very critical of data and to know the limits of data rather than just accepting it on a surface level. And also equip students to employ design thinking and to understand technology and to engage with it effectively. And so our position then in the book, and the positive message that we put forward, is that we have an opportunity in arts graduate education to do better, and to do better both for the purpose of Canada and for the purpose of our students. So a lot of opportunity there, and I'm going to hand the mic over to Lisa, who's going to carry on.
So I get to bring the slightly less happy message that, in our view, the status quo is not sustainable. And there are a number of reasons for this, and we've got lots of data in the book. But first, we have to acknowledge that in many disciplines, not all of them, but in many disciplines, there's declining student demand, particularly domestic student demand. And I think that is a signal that the so-called market is sending about the perceived value of what we're offering. We know that in many arts disciplines, times to completion are long and completion rates are low. Again, we see these as signs that not all is well. And finally, the place where many conversations about what we should be doing about graduate education, and particularly doctoral education, we have to acknowledge that there are not enough academic tenure stream jobs for the graduates that we are producing. And if we are only designing our programs to prepare people to work in the academy, then we are preparing many of our students for disappointment. And that is something that we feel we have to acknowledge. So our vision is that we can reach a place in Canada where our graduate programs are respected. They're responsive to Canada's public good. They're in demand. Students are motivated to get into our programs. Faculty members are deeply engaged with this kind of education, and that our graduates are sought after when they finish our programs. And that our enrollments are robust. So that's where we'd like to end. The question then is, how do we get there? And so we have created an acronym, EDITS, that encapsulates the characteristics that we think are essential in graduate programs in the social sciences and humanities. And I'm not going to speak about them at length because, of course, you're all going to pick up a copy of the book and you can read about it. For those of you who are running programs or are faculty members who are engaged in programs, we have a rubric that takes into account all of these characteristics, and it gives you a chance to rate your program, see how it's doing on that front. So the first characteristic that we talk about is efficiency. And of course, economics is one of the arts disciplines in most universities, and so the economists would appreciate that we talk about efficiency. We borrow the concept of opportunity cost from the economists, and we think about what the cost of graduate education is to students who are devoting many years of their life to it. And we really argue that we need to think carefully about whether we are moving students through our programs as efficiently as we might, whether we are using our very scarce, increasingly scarce in Alberta, resources as efficiently as we might. And so we think that efficiency is a value that ought to be considered when we look at graduate programs in the arts. We think that program design should be deliberate. Rather than representing a compromise among faculty members who can't agree on what the reading lists should be or what the course requirements should be, we should be thinking very much of the purpose of a program and then course requirements that reflect this, that there should be deliberate design and not a multi-layered historical account of what the department decided on when looking at course requirements. Inclusion, not surprisingly, we think is extraordinarily important, and that relates to everything from curriculum to the social events associated with a graduate program. Inclusion, considerations of student mental health really need to be built into graduate programs. Graduate programs need to be focused on developing talent. Loleen has already spoken about the talent imperative, and so we think that graduate programs need to speak explicitly about the talents that they are helping students that are enrolled in them hone. And finally, we argue that programs need to be student-focused. And that might seem like a motherhood and apple pie kind of a statement, but it isn't necessarily. I think we need to think about, and we encourage our colleagues to have conversations about why they have a graduate program in their unit. And if the answer is because faculty members need to supervise graduate students for their career prospects, or because we need teaching assistants, we argue that that's not good enough. And that deliberate design of the program really needs to be focused on students' needs. So that is our EDITS vision. I'm not going into a lot of detail here. I think there's lots of room for conversation about that. But the message that we want to leave you with here, and I'm going to hand it over to Jonathan in just a moment, who's going to finish up, is to suggest that change is in fact possible. And in the book, what we try to do is to talk both about grand visions of change, which might be possible in some contexts, but also about modest changes that can move a program in the direction of what we would hope to see in our arts graduate programs. Okay, Jonathan.
Okay, so I've read a few books on universities that have ideas like this, and they often then sort of stop at, the university should do this, or people should do this. And one thing we really want to do in the book is to try and offer some practical guidance on exactly what needs to be done at different levels of the university in different areas. And we just want to give a little taste of that in our final remarks here and so on. So we do say, what the university can do. We really want to emphasize some particular things that we think that can be done at the university level. They can be done at the faculty level, at the unit level. There's lots of opportunities for conversations among individual faculty and units, conversations among students about graduate education, about what's the plan, why do we have a graduate program, all the questions we ask there and so on. We think there can be conversations at that level. There, of course, need to be conversations at different levels of the university, at the faculty level, at the vice presidential level, and so on, all that. There's really roles for everyone to play, as well as external actors, particularly funding agencies and stuff. There's a lot of different actors at work that we think can also be part of change. But if you look at, say here, particularly we emphasize a few things we think that the university can do to advance this vision that we put out here. The first is to appreciate the distinctiveness of arts programs. I want to say this is not saying arts is special, that we are something special there, but distinctiveness, we mean that arts is simply different than other parts of the university, particularly when it comes to graduate education. We think particularly of in most STEM disciplines, most lab-based disciplines, students are very much admitted to work under a specific lab, under a PI, etc. In the arts, generally people are admitted to a program and so on, and they just sort of find a supervisor often there. In the lab disciplines, usually the graduate students are working on projects related directly to what the faculty member is doing. In the arts, I can tell you this as an arts faculty member, your graduate students are often working on projects completely unrelated to your own work. They're within your competence, your interests, and so on, but the students are doing their own thing. And those are examples of how arts, I think, is distinctive from other parts of the university, and then different parts of the university also would have their own distinction. So I think that needs to be appreciated, not just, as nice, because that really affects funding. That really affects how money works, incentives work within the university. And I see this, and one of my roles is Associate Dean, Research and Graduate Studies. I really see the difference between my art side of the university and the STEM side of the university in terms of how money works for funding graduate students. You're nodding on and on very much there. And I think often it's not really acknowledged that, hey, these are really different ways of doing it, and there's more than one that was there. So I appreciate this distinctiveness is key. A second, as we have here, is to articulate a vision for arts graduate programs contributing to society. That really touches on what we said at the beginning here, that we think arts graduate programs have something really to contribute to the public good. We talk about those imperatives of talent, of wicked problems, and of equity, diversity, indigenization, and decolonization. We think that there's a lot of things that arts programs can really serve well, and we want to really encourage people to think about how can arts programs be shaped around those things, efficient, deliberate, etc., to contribute to society and serve the public good. Third, convene conversations about what this might look like on your campus. As I said earlier, we can sit back and let some other level of the university suddenly do something. We can maybe have money fall from the sky. That would be very nice. It doesn't happen very often there. But we think one thing anyone can do is convene conversations, as we said, whether it's whether it's sort of informally in the hallway or more formally in department meetings, etc. Collaborations, particularly across departments, would be quite useful. I think most of us work in our own academic departments or in our own hierarchies and silos. We don't interact with other units. We aren't having conversations with them, and we aren't bringing students into these conversations most of all. I think a basic question faculty should be asking themselves is, as the question here is, why do we have a graduate program? Why is it here? And asking students, why do you think we have a graduate program? What are you getting out of this program? So sometimes some very basic questions I think are important for convening these conversations about advancing arts graduate education. Fourth, we have here is appointing a champion for change. So we think that we agree that everyone's going to listen to this and think, yeah, this is good, this is good, this is good. But there are a lot of other worthy things to pursue in university campuses. And particularly senior administrators know there are a lot of very good things that you could be working on all at once. And you can't do that, and often they clash against each other. So one goal or value clashes against another. So we think that really there has to be a champion for change of some sort, whether it's a particular administrator, such as say, a graduate dean or something, or someone else. So it's someone who really has some authority and some time and some space to really pursue this vision. Because certainly we know this, that high-level administrators can say this is good, this is worthy, but there are other things. There are other and the other priorities, of course, crowd things out and stuff. So there does need to be, we think, clearly a champion on campus to really drive this. It may not be someone with a formal administrative role, maybe a special role, but we really think that's important to make, particularly the culture change that one needs. And then finally, to make strategic investments. We think that, again, we are not expecting money to come. We know times are tight there, but we think that universities do need to be able to bid money, whether it's to pilot projects, to helping programs survey their students and alumni, for example, to redesign a program in some way, and so on. So it's not big money across the board, but we think there definitely is a place for some strategic investments to make some changes that will hopefully lead to broader change in graduate education. So those are just some of the ideas we have, and in the book we have many, many more. I'm just going to close here with a couple more slides. Again, go back to the beginning. We said at the end we're talking about changing graduate education, things we do there. But in the end, we really think that Canada needs this. Canada needs the arts and graduate education to solve many of the wicked problems and challenges that we have today. So we just want to really emphasize again that we think graduate education needs some work. We need status quo is not sustainable, as we said. But it's not just about fixing it, because we think there's a really broader public good. The book is called For the Public Good for that reason. And we really think arts and graduate education can and should help address Canada's public good imperatives. We think it really has a place, as do all the other disciplines, all the other areas like that. We really think there's a vision there, and we're really glad to help advance that. And we hope that this conversation today, and continuing in a minute, really helps you think about what can your role be, each person here, what can your role be in advancing graduate education for the public good. So with that, I'm going to conclude, and we're going to move to the next part of the program. Thank you very much.
Great. Thanks, Jonathan. And it's a really great overview of the book, but they didn't even scratch the surface of all of the nuggets of wisdom that are in there. So please encourage you afterwards to visit the table at the back. But before we get there, I do want to introduce our next set of guests. First, I want to introduce, and this will be part of a roundtable. So I've got some questions for the following people. It's kind of a meet the author / response to the book and its wisdom. So I'm going to start with Dr. Maren Wood. So Maren, if you could join us, please. Dr. Maren Wood is the founder and CEO of Beyond the Professoriate, and is CEO, also the director of the Center for Graduates Career Success, which is a mission-driven organization that partners with universities like ours to prepare master's and doctoral students for career success. And I'm going to also invite Dean Tracy Raivio from Graduate and Postdoctoral Studies, who shares my enthusiasm for this book. I think both of us went through like a pack of highlighters each. At that point, right, the book's it's all highlighted, right? Am I right? And also Dean Robert Wood, who is no relation to Maren, but also no stranger to our authors as well. Robert has a deep history in graduate studies as well. So, please join me in welcoming our other panelists. And Robert, I'm going to start with you.
Gosh.
What one theme from the book resonates most with you when it comes to the future of grad studies here in arts at the U of A?
Oh, can I pick two, or am I just limited to one?
Final season is over, so we will allow two. Yes.
I mean, honestly, but first off, I want to say thanks to the authors. I think this is a very special book, a very special contribution. There's very little else like it, I think, in the Canadian landscape, so thank you very much. And I know Loleen and Jonathan, by reputation, also had the privilege of working with Lisa Young when she was a grad dean, and at a time when she was known as one of the, I think, most visionary and pioneering graduate deans in the country. So thanks, Lisa, for the time that we got to work together. And there really is a lot going on in this book that causes me to reflect and contemplate. But there's a couple of pieces that I kept coming back to. And I think it's just a function of where we're at as a university right now, and sort of the growth mandate that we're grappling with as an institution. And so I found myself going back to this construct of the growth mindset, and that came up a couple of times, and sort of this construct of sort of growth without purpose. I don't want to say that we're trying to grow without any purpose, or that's what we tend to do. But there really is, given sort of the financial imperatives of the day, given some of the constraints around where we are able to expand our enrollments. And, I think about this more having gone from being a grad dean to a faculty dean a number of years ago. I do find myself slipping into that growth mindset, and I really had to check myself when I was reading this book. And I think that's something that we need to be talking a lot more about, that growing graduate education is important and it's valuable for many, many reasons. But again, as a faculty dean, under the auspices of the current sort of climate, one can easily start to think about it only in terms of numbers and revenue, and I think that's a problem, and we should be talking more about that. The other thing that I thought a lot about, and sorry, but it made me sad, and then I also felt frustrated because I feel like we never seem to be able to figure this one out. But there was some really, I think, good reflection in the book around, the time to completion issue. And we all know that this is an issue in the humanities and social sciences. There's many reasons for it. One of the things I find problematic is that I feel in some disciplines there can be almost a culture of extended time to completion, and that even though we have these PhD degrees that are, from the standpoint of the ministry, these are 4-year programs. That's what they're approved for. So to have a culture where sort of the norm is 6 years or 7 years, I think is problematic. But we all know, whether it's from our own experience or students that we know, we're familiar with that situation of the arts graduate student, languishing in program for 6, 7, 8 years. Again, it makes me sad. It also makes me frustrated because we all know it's an issue. We know why it's an issue. But for decades now, we haven't been able to, step back in a way and extract ourselves from the issue in a way that helps us to, move forward. And I think it's important too, because the time to completion, it implicates so many other things. I mean, it implicates student well-being. It implicates funding and cost of the institution. It implicates opportunity costs, which comes up quite a bit in the book. So again, those are there's many things that I thought a lot about. It made me remember that I did used to be a graduate dean, and I enjoyed that memory. But I guess it'll be my contribution for now, the growth mindset and the time to completion / attrition, issue. Yeah.
Thanks, Robert. I'd be remiss if I didn't share a story of first time I met Lisa was when I was doing my grad studies at the University of Calgary, and I didn't know that 5 years was an option. You meet her and she's on your committee. It's 4 and done, Jared, it's 4 and done. And I think she holds the record for the fastest time to completion with 3.5 with one of your students who's now the CEO of the leading polling company in the country. So you can do it and be successful. I just wanted to add that.
I take no credit.
No.
Totally self-directed.
So I'm going to move to Tracy because I saw you nodding quite a bit as we were talking about what was going on in arts. But I'm curious as to what's one thing you pulled from the book that's applicable across campus beyond arts?
Yeah, so first of all, I want to congratulate the authors and thank them for the book. I was very enthusiastic when I first got here because, I haven't read through the whole book, but I was, going through this book furiously, and I kept trying to go through it faster because I kind of wanted to get through everything and have kind of an idea, but I kept coming on pages that I really wanted to just dive into and absorb, so I'm very much looking forward to having a deeper dive. But there's so much in there, and like Robert, I think I struggled to identify just a couple of things, and points that were raised as well in the talk today were really interesting. I loved the points about, funding and thinking about how that's different across campus. And one of the things we've been doing on campus recently is exploring a lot of conversations around how we support our graduate students. And as a result of those conversations, I've been diving into all of the differences amongst all the degrees across campus and how that impacts funding. And it's surprising how many of those things are connected to themes and topics that you talked about and things that are in the book. But getting to a couple of things I think that really resonate with me that we're talking about across campus and across graduate programs. One of the things that came through really strongly for me today while you were talking, and also in my reading of the book, is the theme around connection. And it's really about, you spoke about it as well just a few minutes ago, this moving from this state of very siloed disciplines where we have a lot of rules and hierarchy and things that dictate programs that are based on our disciplinary histories and cultures. And that really, the space that I think we're moving into just across all of graduate studies is really, what is the role in society of graduate studies? What's the role of universities, right? And so I think it's, not only, arts has a role in Canada, I think graduate studies and the connections that we make across in talking about the big, thorny, global societal problems, many of which were brought up by Loleen when she spoke, that, we all know in this room, right, that we can't solve any of those in isolation with one discipline, that we have to be talking across and working on those problems from the beginning and in partnership. So that piece about connection and, making that connection across all of our disciplines is really close to my heart. The other piece that I liked which is, maybe more of a topic for debate and discussion, but I love the idea about asking why. Like, why do we have graduate degrees? Why do we have graduate students? Why do we have this degree and this degree? And, what is the reason for those? What are students getting out of those? How are those, serving society? How are those solving the problems that we need to solve in the world today? And so I think, asking that question as a point to start at when you're thinking about graduate program evolution, which is something that, Robert alluded to a moment ago, we're having a lot of conversations around enrollment growth, which are fraught with all kinds of debate and discussion, but they do position us to think about the why. And when we're adopting, a mindset that will open up accessibility, maybe expand graduate studies to other types of learners from what we have historically reached, they do provide spaces for that sort of inspirational kind of navel gazing around, why do we have these programs? Why do we have our students here? What's the outcome going to be? And that really student experience piece. So I'll stop there. Those are two pieces that that really kind of resonated with my current thinking around a lot of things.
Great. Thanks, Tracy. Maren and I met, must be a decade ago, when you first started Beyond the Professoriate, actually.
But we're not that old.
Was it? No, sorry. It was only 10 months ago.
There you go. That's better.
But I remember when I first started in this role, it's an odd thing to think about, but I thought one of my goals, one of my targets, and it's measurable, I'm going to meet with more grad students than Maren. And I say that because it is surprising. You do great work, and you work with, I'm going to guess, thousands of grad students a year through Beyond the Professoriate, coaching, talking about what their careers could look like. How many of us in grad administration can say that we've actually sat down and met with grad students in our own institution for the amount of time that Maren has? And I think the work you do is great and very important, but we should be doing the same kind of thing to understand, as Tracy and Robert both just said as well. So I wonder, what's one thing in arts grad programs that our grad programs could do tomorrow to better connect students to rewarding opportunities beyond the professoriate?
Yeah, I mean, I just wanted to jump on something that Robert had mentioned, which is like this time to degree. I think one of the challenges that we have, especially with arts students, especially in the humanities, is that this is the one time that they're going to be able to like read Shakespeare and talk about it, and they don't want to leave. And part of that is the lack of vision of like where else they can go. And so I think what we really need to do is help students plan for careers from the beginning that are outside the professoriate. Even if they do, we don't know who's going to be quote unquote successful in landing an academic job. So every student who comes into a program needs to be connected with alumni, so that they can have those conversations and have a vision for where else they can have career satisfaction. Because too often they assume that their subject matter expertise is that career satisfaction. And what we always say is like, you're studying the thing that you love because of who you are as a person, right? Like you have this interest and therefore you're reading dead people's diaries. Like what was it before you read dead people's diaries that was really interesting to you? And so that's where those are the kinds of conversations that, faculty can have with students. taking more of that design life approach of like your values and your interests and your motivators, because if students can have a vision for why they're passionate about a topic, even an esoteric topic like representations of sex in early American print culture, as an example that comes to mind, if they can understand that what they're interested in is like storytelling and narrative and how people move through the world and how we tell stories and connect with each other, if you can actually understand why you love history or why you love English and do it in a way that's not so tied to your topic, then the world opens up and there becomes all of these opportunities for you to do a range of things. But it really is helping students understand career satisfaction and what that actually means to them. And that it's unique to every person, right? If you ask 10 historians why they study history, you're going to get 10 different answers. And so taking that student approach to career planning, moving beyond discipline, and not even, like for faculty, like you don't have to know how to use LinkedIn or how to get your students jobs. If we can just help students think about that topic of who you are as a person, what you bring to the table, what you're passionate about, and then connect them to alumni to have those conversations with people working beyond the professoriate, students will then be able to see their futures, because when you survey graduate students, they're terrified about their futures. They're brought into graduate programs, they're focused on their academic discipline, and then they feel like there's a bait and switch that happens where it's like, well, that's very nice that you're good at Shakespeare, but now you have to go do this other thing. And it happens quite suddenly for them kind of towards the end of graduation. And so we really need to be baking this into for the students that you have now, the students that are coming into your programs, that needs to become a really central part of graduate mentorship for the arts and humanities.
Thanks, Maren, and thanks for all the work that you do. I know I've had a number of my students that have worked through your program and really appreciate that. To the authors, I'm not sure who's going to field this question. I was going to direct it at the deans, but you'll see why I didn't in just a moment. Budgets are tight in arts faculties across Canada. What's your response to naysayers who say there's simply not enough resources to pivot in the ways that you describe in the book?
Resources are always tight there, but culture and vision don't necessarily depend on resources. We actually break it out into the three areas: vision, culture, and resources. And so, yes, there's limited money. We ask for some strategic investments and so on. But a lot of the first thing is conversations. Conversations are usually free. And being able to think about why do we have a graduate program? Was it serving? What's it doing, and so on? And what would be the vision of a new program and stuff? That all can be done more or less resource free. And the ideas we have are not really necessarily about bringing in new money at all. It's some of the ideas, certainly if you could develop some things, you'd be good to have some resources for some things. But ultimately more it's about, I think, using the money that we have and realigning it in new ways, including efficiencies between programs and units. We think that there's a lot of arts graduate programs operate very much in silos. They don't really talk to each other about what they can do. The holy grail is always shared methodology courses and stuff. That's always batted around as an idea, and every discipline's kind of it's got to be for our discipline, et cetera, there. But that would be sort of an area where I think there's opportunity for collaboration or for professional development and so on like that. So we can do a fair amount with the resources that we do have there. I think the danger is really, though, that some of the ideas we have may lead to these temporary drops in enrollment and stuff. Maybe students are not as interested in this, or programs are going to say we're not going to take fewer students, and that means less revenue often for the university. That's actually the biggest risk that there is, and so on. But we think that a lot of our ideas, we really know more money would be super, obviously, but nowhere in the book do we say really that this needs money to do this and so on. There, it's much more what can we do exactly with our existing resources, and particularly in vision and culture, which you can do a lot of stuff there without any cost.
Mm-hmm. Just $36.95 for the book. That's
34
available at the back table. Yes. To the authors again, another question. I'm not sure who's fielding it. What's the one best or promising practice you'd highlight for folks that are interested in shifting their programs in the way that you described here? Do you have an example of something that's worked at other universities that you'd like to highlight?
This is an example that sort of builds on Jonathan's example of things not costing a lot of money. I'm not going to point to a particular program, but I'll use some work I've done as an example. But having conversations and having evidence-based conversations about what we're doing in our programs, I think is a best practice. It's a free practice. What it costs is our time and our patience with each other and a fair bit of curiosity. So the example I'll give is I run a policy school, and I came in, and we have professional programs, but we also have a PhD that is essentially it is an arts PhD. It's an interdisciplinary degree in PhD in public policy, and long times to completion. A lot of people ending up having to work, all the things that we talk about in the book, and coming in, holding my views, writing a book on this, and also leading the school was disquieting for me. So I established a working group. So that's something that someone can do as a grad chair or whatever their role is, and started some conversations about this, and started with, well, what's the purpose of this degree? One thing that there was a fair bit of resistance from some faculty members with respect to shifting it away from it being focused on preparing people for academic careers, because their position was our students are successful in academic careers. And I said, okay, great. And then I went back and I got the data, and I found out where every single one of our graduates were. Our students were not successful in academic careers. They might have had a postdoc or two, or sometimes three, but then they went to something else. Or they might have been working for a while as a lecturer, and that's what the faculty member was remembering, but then they went to something else. Our students who graduated and became faculty members were Indigenous women who were meeting particular important hiring needs of universities, but it's not. So, and faced with that data, and we showed the times to completion, we showed the incompletion rates. Faced with that data, the conversation quickly became uncomfortable for everybody. And it was like, we're not proud of this. And then it was like, well, what would we be proud of? We'd be proud of creating graduates who are kick-ass policy researchers. What does that mean? That means that they need really good methods. That means they need this. That means, and so there's the conversation, and I think part of these conversations, so it's sort of a best practice, is talking to each other and getting curious. So if somebody's resistant to, well, it has to be this way, well, why? What are the underlying beliefs? And then does the evidence for your program, for your actual program, support those beliefs? And then trying to get people excited. I like to say, try to tap into people's creative energy around things. In my experience, faculty members in the arts, with a few exceptions, are a bit tired and frustrated by their graduate programs, but they don't know how to change them, and so they keep going on and on and on. And so if somebody starts the conversation, that can create some room for change. So talking.
Yeah,
Read.
no, I mean, the irony is that a lot of arts researchers themselves spend their days asking why questions of other things, but we don't ask the question of ourselves, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I see Tracy also nodding at the importance of data. So we're going to come to you in just a moment, because I know that's a big part of your strategy too here at the U of A. Before I do, though, Maren, same question that I asked to Loleen. I wonder if you could talk a little bit more broadly, maybe include some lessons from the U.S. schools. Who's getting things right when it comes to arts educations and achieving the public good?
Nobody. Oh, did you want me to say more? I mean, it's on my bookshelf I have I've books from the late 70s where people are writing about golly gee, we should really do something about this crisis in the humanities, and golly gee, our students aren't getting jobs, and golly gee, we should do something, and you're like, yeah, we should do something. I'm on a committee. It's a U.S. committee. I've been on it for I think 10 years. It's like the future of the humanities, and they're going to release their report in I think 3 more years with the idea that they're going to do something in 5, and I thought, I'm 50. What the heck? So I'm really excited about this. I think if any university that is serious about this problem, there's piecemeal stuff. So people will do we'll do internships and then they run out of money, or they'll do something over here and then they'll run out of money, or we'll do an alumni event and then we run out of money. There's never been a sustained, seriously, for 40 years, 45 years, there's never been a sustained effort to do the thing we know we need to do, which is insist upon the relevance of the humanities and social sciences. And that's what I love so much about this book, is that, my PhD's in history, and to Loleen's point, you go and you talk about, well, we should do skills, or we should do this, and I don't know what, if you're going to scream about wanting to be irrelevant and how you don't want to teach your students skills, then don't complain when they give all the money to the business school, because it's making their argument about their relevance. I hire people from the humanities, social sciences. I see the power of what it is that we're capable of doing. We're empathetic leaders. We're, if they're great managers, great, middle managers, and senior leaders throughout all different organizations, not just in the public good, but within corporations and within all kinds of organizations, because we teach empathy. We teach people how to communicate. We teach people digital literacy. There's so many things that come out of an arts program that are so important, that cannot be outsourced, that are not going to be automated. AI is not going to do it. And we really need to take that seriously. But I think that, this book's fantastic. Let's do it.
Lisa, you had a quick point.
Sorry, really quickly, I guess just a shout out to UBC's Public Scholars Program. When you said nobody, I thought, no, not nobody, but it is piecemeal,
and it
right?
runs out of money.
Yeah, exactly. And my question is, does it survive the change in deans there, right?
Yeah.
But there are programs like that, and we do talk in the book about some best practices, that should give us ideas about what we might do and how we might integrate this, not as a special program on the side, but in our actual programs.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the Ohio State did some things a while ago, but again, it ran out of funding. UNC Chapel Hill, they had $3,000 they gave people for internships. It ran out of money. So there's always these things that people are doing, but to your point, it's not sustained, and it's often in addition to, as opposed to actually focusing on the curriculum, which is what I think you guys are pushing, and where there's a lot of innovation, rather than being we'll have our students do summer internships and maybe they'll figure out they can get a non-academic job. Can we actually build programs that will support students and attract students, I think, to your point, that want to do that kind of work and want to solve those kinds of problems, and it's a different kind of graduate student than the ones that are being recruited into programs now. And I think that's really interesting and exciting.
Go ahead, Tracy.
I actually want to ask a question. So in thinking about this and hearing this conversation, which is really inspiring and fantastic, I wonder, from all of you that have thought so much about this, how much of this is structural and related to, I mentioned that we've been thinking a lot about funding, and so I know that there was a slide up there about, that the way that RAs are in the arts versus how they are handled in, STEM. And so how much of this do you think is structural when we have to think about innovative changes that will be sustainable and last into the future, as opposed to the piecemeal, strategic initiatives that you're talking about? And I would love to hear this group's thoughts.
We have a whole chapter basically on how the system evolved to where it is, and how it's actually quite logical. It's responded to various incentives, whether it's provincial funding incentives, federal research funding, which works completely separate from provincial, that way there. The individual career ambitions of individual faculty, the ambitions of different units to get ahead in the university and get their share of the university pie, and the best way to do it is grow your graduate program, et cetera. So there are all these perfectly logical reasons why the system has evolved the way it has. Mm-hmm. None of which really, and I should say, and even student demand, in the sense that students are applying to programs. They're often deliberately picking arts programs because they want to do deep dives into history and theory and so on. They don't want to go to a professional program. So there is there's student demand as well. So it's evolved in all sorts of ways, but has evolved to really actually serve students and work in an overall coherent way. And we argue no. A lot of it is a lack of vision. Everyone's busy doing their thing. There isn't time to think and do things. A lot is path dependent. Simply, we've gone down this way. Like the costs of changing are too high, et cetera. There. So that's actually a very big part of the book, is to say that a lot of the problem is structural, in the sense that it's evolve based on certain incentives, informal cultures, different ways there. And so the way to change it is indeed not to bolt on new things, as Maren was saying. It has to change the curriculum and the programs. And to do that, you have to change the incentive structures. And why we address the book, we address it not just to faculty, but also university administrators, funding agencies, and others that are all part of the system.
Great. So we've got time for one last question. I'm going to turn it over to the audience for questions here. And this one's my favorite because it takes me back to when I interviewed for my position in his office, and I get to flip the tables a little bit here with Robert. Your question went something like this, actually. Earlier, I'd asked Maren what's one thing that grad programs could do tomorrow to reimagine their role in the public good. I'm going to flip the question around for you. What's one thing that we could do to make things worse for arts grad programs and students here at the U of A?
One thing we could do to make things worse. I mean, that's a tough question. I don't know if it's something that, I don't know if it's necessarily just one thing, but sort of a theme that I think about and I guess I worry about. And it sort of ties into this concept of relevance, I think that, Maren had talked about. In the context of the growth mindset, the political sort of expediencies of the government of the day, the last-minute calls for proposals for targeted areas. I do worry that in arts that we go through contortions to fit that, and I'm worried that we will lose the essence of who we are. And I think that's something we have to always remember, the essence of who we are. And I mean, I don't have a monopoly of perspective on that. I mean, we all have a different perspective on who we are as a graduate community in the arts, but we're a community that emphasizes critical and provocative inquiry. We gravitate towards issues of social justice and human rights and the well-being of human beings. We promote activism and praxis and actions towards transforming structures of oppression, and those things are important. And we always have to, I think, cultivate space for that, and make sure that we always remember the essence of who we are as an arts community. Again, in the face of pressures to go through contortions to be something different. Mm-hmm. And it's not quite as simple as that, but sometimes it feels that way. And I mean, those that have been in the grad space, especially in Alberta, will know that, these days there aren't, new funds for new programs, and there hasn't been for quite some time. There's random calls for proposals that are very, I think, politically and sort of ideologically driven. And, to get that money, we do sometimes find ourselves going through some manner of contortions to fit. And so that worries me. So let's not do that. Yeah. Or if we do it, let's do it in a way that honors the essence of who we are as an arts community.
Yes. Thanks, Robert. So I want to leave some time for folks in the audience that might have questions, and I understand Cindy and your team, have got mics there. So we're going to go over here to Yasmin, and I can take a speaker's list too. If you have a question, I can note.
That's great, thanks. Just again, congratulations on the book. I'm so looking forward to reading it. We managed to have this whole conversation that began with an observation, I think, from Loleen that domestic students aren't enrolling in graduate programs as much. But the subtext of that is that there's more international students. And so I kind of want to put that on the table a little bit to just get your thoughts on what Canada is doing in relation to international students, the use of international students as, kind of a cash cow for universities, and also the fact that with the kind of funding structure we have, I think one of the things we're seeing is more and more international students are having to do other kinds of work, if they can get it, to pay tuition fees and in a sense, and I just wrote a book with colleagues on immigration, they've become, like this, in a sense, like temporary foreign workers in the labor market in Canada. So there's so many issues there around graduate training, but also kind of ethics and what we're doing. So I'd love your thoughts on that.
Yeah, and I have to say, I distinctly remember a moment early in my days, I think it was interim dean of graduate studies, and it suddenly dawned on me that I was sort of responsible for a chunk of Canadian immigration policy, right? And it was like, what on earth, this wasn't in the job description, but then, when you work through the logic, there it is, right? And that was more than 10 years ago, and the situation has changed, it has accelerated significantly. And so, when we talk in the book about graduate students and international graduate students, we're being, it's a really tricky thing to talk about, because on the one hand, we think it's an important thing to observe that domestic students don't see the value, in many of our graduate programs. That's telling us something, right? That's a wake-up call. And one of the things that we see is universities admitting international students because they want to keep their student numbers up, right? And so that doesn't bring international students in on the footing that you necessarily want, right? And I think international students can bring tremendous value to our graduate programs, our community, right? So this is not a, build a wall, close the doors, but I think that's absolutely a consideration. And it goes far beyond what we talk about in the book, but the economic situation for many of those graduate students, I think, is increasingly challenging and raises all sorts of questions that I don't think universities have thought through. The public policy around it is incoherent, and it really is an important policy, but also moral question, I think. When we have international students, asking, are we willing to supervise them? For me, it's, I look at that and it's a moral question as much as a, question about fit and preparation.
Gordon.
Thank you for your book. I look forward to reading. I haven't yet, but I'm Gordon Gow. I run a graduate program in communications and technology at the university. We're 25 years old this year. We were innovative at the time. When we came online in 2000, we were a blended graduate program that combined online education at a time when it was pretty new. But the other thing that we did, I think, innovatively was we were targeting mid-career professionals and thinking about them as graduate students and thinking about the role of arts and humanities and social sciences in building leadership capacity outside of the sort of the MBA box that a lot of mid-career people look at. So just question is, in the book, I mean, do you talk about that kind of graduate student in addition to, there's always the grad students who are starting their careers, but the ones that come back after they've been away for 10 years are very excited and eager learners, and a real pleasure to teach, actually. And in our cohorts, when we mix them with the younger groups, you get these amazing dynamics between seasoned professionals who are coming back to university for the first time, but younger graduate students who look up to them as mentors. And we have very interesting kinds of exchanges in the classroom between those two generations, if you want to think about it. So the question is, do you talk about that in the book?
I'll start and then let you. So one of the things that we talk about in the book is sort of different types and purposes of graduate degrees. And so we talk about the master's degree, but we also talk about professional masters, which it sounds like your program straddles a bit, and then the traditional PhD, but also the professional doctorates. And we talk about the potential to do more in the area of those professional graduate degrees, and to design programs that draw upon that background experience and add to that, assuming they're staying in the same field or sort of using this as a transition, there's a real opportunity for them to use that as a launch, which is very different than a traditional, for example, if I'm thinking at the master's level, your traditional Master of Arts, where you come and you take some classes and you may or may not write a thesis proposal, and then you spend however long to write your thesis and may or may not talk to your supervisor for 3 to 4 months at a time. There's so much variation, and the professional programming, if we think about it, and we're seeing programs coming up, Master of Applied Politics or Master of Applied this. that's where I think they can really speak to the needs of that mid-career student, and also to bring the knowledge of that mid-career professional student in an enriching way. So, but Lisa, you're going to...
I was going to give exactly that answer.
I can just add, we think there is, particularly the professional doctorate is not seen much in Canada. There's a couple of places doing it, like Royal Roads. And that's an area where, I think units might want to think more about that, and look less at sort of the 24-year-old graduate student, look more at the 48-year-old graduate student who has a job, who has a career, and is looking for an intellectual experience rather than the other way around. We'll see what's this in the book, but we've been doing some other research projects. We did some collaborations with some Australian colleagues and did some surveys of graduate student populations, the PhD student populations there. And it was really interesting seeing how different the PhD population was in Australia, where it's a different funding model. There generally isn't funding. It's various things there. So there are so many more mid-career retired professionals in programs compared to Canada. It was quite striking the differences there. And that's a whole different funding model. That's why it's evolved that way. We've sort of not tapped that, and I think there's a lot of people that want to go back to school. And I think, as you said, it's obviously your program's been successful that way, and I think a lot of other arts programs could at least consider whether that's an option.
Last word to you, Lisa.
Yeah, and I guess what I would say is that one of the real barriers, talking about structural barriers, one of the real barriers to imagining a graduate program that meets the interests of exactly those fantastic students that you're talking about is the notion that we are preparing people for the academy, and that you want to have them done by the time they're 30, so that they can start their job. And so it's that notion that the PhD is the preparation for one career and one career only really makes it difficult to find space for exactly those students.
Great. Well, please join me in thanking Robert, Maren, and Tracy for their contributions to this discussion. Thank you. And to our three authors, Jonathan, Loleen, and Lisa, I think it's a helpful reminder that, as I said earlier, that social scientists and humanities scholars often spend our time asking questions about why, about policy and moral questions, about societal needs, about systemic barriers, and so on. But I'm so glad that we have you folks turning your lens inward, right, and looking at us internally as systems, as communities, as contributors to society. And that's really the value of the book, right, is that you have scholars who are looking at our systems in a very systemic way. So thank you three for writing this book, and please join me in thanking them for that. All right, so just after this, we invite you folks to join us and the authors out in the reception area. There is a cash bar available there. There's also a book signing station that we'll have up with the authors over there, and books are available at the back. Before we go, though, I do want to thank University of Alberta Press, Douglas, Matt, and Kathy for all of their help in putting the book together, but also putting this event together. I want to also thank Cindy, Catherine, and Claire from Faculty of Arts for all of your help in making today a reality. And thank all of you for attending, and hopefully you've believed as inspired as I have to go out and make arts education that much better for the public good. Thanks.